The rumor had been spreading across star systems for months now, becoming more outlandish with each retelling. Xyler, a historian and journalist of the Xantid species, found it difficult to believe. The Xantids prided themselves on logical thinking and physical evidence, and this particular tale defied both. "You want me to investigate what?" Xyler asked, their crystalline appendages shifting in a pattern that indicated skepticism. Editor Vextra's membrane pulsed with mild irritation. The human incident, the Ctherix Prime encounter, the slap. Even hearing it stated so plainly made Xyler's outer carapace ripple with disbelief. The claim was absurd on its face. The humans, relatively new to the galactic stage and physically unimpressive by any standard, had somehow subdued Ctherix Prime, the fearsome leader of the Cthar, with nothing more than a slap. The Cthar were the galaxy's nightmare, massive reptilian predators who had devastated countless worlds. Their thick hides resisted most energy weapons, their technology was ruthlessly efficient, and their bloodlust was legendary. For decades, the Galactic Council's military forces had failed to contain them. Entire battle fleets had perished in confrontations with Cthar war parties. And yet, supposedly, a single human had subdued their leader with a mere physical gesture? "The Council is being unusually secretive about what happened on Argos 7, Vextra continued. "That alone makes this story worth investigating. If there's even a fragment of truth to it, we need to understand what happened." Xyler's skepticism remained firmly intact. "And what exactly am I supposed to be investigating? That a human, a bipedal mammal with no natural weapons, negligible muscle density compared to most spacefaring species, and bone structures that would snap under a Cthar-esque casual grip, somehow intimidated Ctherix Prime into submission with physical contact that wouldn't bruise a Xantid child." "Precisely," Vextra replied, their voice modulator betraying a hint of amusement. "Either uncover the truth behind this absurdity or debunk it entirely. Either outcome will make for excellent publication." As Xyler departed the crystalline spires of the Xantid Journal headquarters, their thought processes were already organizing the investigation methodically. The first step would be to gather baseline information about humans. Humans were an anomaly in galactic society, originating from a death world called Earth, a planet with such environmental hazards that most species considered it uninhabitable. They had emerged onto the galactic stage only 3 centuries ago. They lacked natural defenses, possessed no venom or significant strength, and their only notable physical attribute was their endurance. They could continue physical activity long after most species would collapse from exhaustion. What truly set humans apart was their unpredictability. Their social structures were in constant flux. Their decision-making often bypassed logical processes for something they called intuition, and they showed a remarkable ability to adapt to almost any environment or situation. This adaptability had earned them both respect and wariness from the established species of the Galactic Council. Xyler's initial research consisted of interviews with secondary witnesses, those who claimed to know someone who knew someone who had been present during the incident. These accounts were wildly inconsistent. Some claimed the human had used a secret technology disguised as a hand gesture. Others insisted it was a psychic attack masked as physical contact. A particularly enthusiastic Drelbian merchant swore that humans secreted a powerful tranquilizer through their palms when threatened. Council officials were equally unhelpful, though in a different way. They acknowledged that an incident had occurred during failed negotiations on the neutral space station Argos 7, but all official records have been heavily redacted or classified entirely. "The matter has been resolved to the satisfaction of all parties," was the standard statement, delivered with the practiced neutrality of bureaucrats across the galaxy. After 2 weeks of frustrating dead ends, Xyler finally uncovered their first genuine lead, a partially decrypted security report that had been leaked onto the galactic data networks. Though incomplete, it contained references to the confrontation between Ctherix Prime and a human delegation. The report ended abruptly just before the critical moment, but it did mention an unconventional action taken by a human security officer named Captain Eva Rostova. At last, Zyler had a name. The space station Argos 7 orbited a neutron star at the edge of disputed territory, its distinctive triple-ring structure now showing visible signs of repair work. As Zyler's small research vessel docked, they observed numerous construction drones still working on the outer hull, patching damage. That, according to public records, had resulted from a minor technical malfunction. The station's security systems scanned Zyler thoroughly before permitting entry, and Azantid noted the heightened presence of Council peacekeepers. Whatever had happened here, the Council was taking no chances on a repeat occurrence. Zyler's credentials as a historian and journalist granted them access to the public areas of the station, but requests to view security footage or access the station's logs from the date of the incident were swiftly denied. The bureaucratic barriers were impressive in their thoroughness. Each denial referenced a different subsection of Council privacy laws or security protocols, creating a perfect web of obstruction. After 3 days of fruitless official inquiries, Zyler changed tactics. If official channels were blocked, perhaps unofficial ones would prove more fruitful. The Xanad began frequenting the station's maintenance areas and lower-deck recreational facilities, where the station's support staff gathered during off-duty hours. It was in a dimly lit corner of the engineering crew's social lounge that Zyler finally encountered Flynn, a maintenance engineer of the Volan species. Volans were known for 2 distinct traits: their remarkable memory for detail and their equally remarkable shyness. Small, furry creatures with 6 limbs and large, sensitive eyes, they preferred shadows and corners to open spaces. Flynn was initially reluctant to speak, their fur bristling with anxiety at Zyler's questions. But the Xantid had come prepared with a rare vintage of fermented root juice, a delicacy among Volans, and slowly, Flynn's resistance melted away. "I was there," Flynn finally admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "In the ventilation maintenance shaft. I wasn't supposed to be there, but the environmental systems were glitching after the Cthar ship docked. They bring their own atmosphere mix, heavy on sulfur compounds. Plays havoc with our filters." "You witnessed the confrontation?" Zyler asked, keeping their tone neutral to avoid startling the nervous Volan. Flynn's whiskers twitched. "I saw everything. I never told anyone. Never filed a report. I was too scared, and then the Council classified everything, and I thought it would be better to pretend I wasn't there." "Would you be willing to share what you saw?" Zyler asked. "For historical accuracy only. I can ensure your anonymity." Flynn stared into their drink for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "It's been keeping me awake for months anyway. Maybe telling someone will help." As Flynn spoke, their initial hesitation gave way to the Volan's natural gift for detailed recall. The scene they described was vivid enough that Zyler could almost project it into their crystalline memory structure. The diplomatic chamber was arranged in the standard Council configuration, a circular table with representatives seated according to their species' environmental needs. The Cthar delegation occupied nearly a third of the space, their massive forms dwarfing the other attendees. Ctharix Prime was unmistakable, larger than the others, with distinctive scarlet markings across its scaled hide and a collection of trophy bones woven into its armor. The negotiations had been tense from the start. The Cthar demanded access to 3 inhabited systems in exchange for ceasing their raids on Council shipping. When the Council representatives refused, the atmosphere shifted from tense to dangerous. Ctharix Prime was losing control, Flynn recalled, whiskers trembling. You could see in the way its auxiliary breathing vents were flaring. The human delegation noticed it too. They started positioning themselves differently, subtle movements, but I could see they were preparing for violence. The breaking point came when the Council's chief negotiator, a Thelian diplomat, suggested that the Cthar's demand revealed weakness, not strength. Ctharix Prime erupted in fury, moving with the shocking speed that made the Cthar such feared combatants. 2 Council security officers were dead before anyone could react, their bodies torn apart by Ctharix's clawed hands. The chamber descended into chaos. Most delegates fled toward the exits, But the human delegation found themselves cut off, cornered by Ctherix Prime and 3 of its warriors. The human diplomats pressed back against the wall, faces displaying the mammalian fear response, but the security officer, Captain Rostova, stepped forward. She was calm, Flynn said, with a note of wonder in their voice. Not the artificial calm of someone suppressing fear, but genuinely untroubled, as if she were facing a minor inconvenience rather than the most feared predator in the galaxy. Ctherix Prime roared a challenge, displaying rows of serrated teeth, each the length of a human finger. It advanced on Rostova, clearly intending to make an example of her before slaughtering the rest of the delegation. What happened next had become the subject of galactic rumor, but Flynn's account was disturbingly simple. Rostova stepped forward, meeting Ctherix Prime's advance. She looked directly into the predator's compound eyes, a universal challenge signal among sentient species. Then, with a swift, deliberate motion, she swung her open palm and struck Ctherix Prime across the side of its snout. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. Not particularly loud or impressive, just the simple impact of soft human flesh against reptilian scales. Everyone froze, Flynn whispered. Even the other Cthar. It was like the universe held its breath. Ctherix Prime just stood there. The rage in its eyes faded, replaced by something I never thought I'd see in a Cthar: confusion. Perhaps even submission? It stared at the human, unmoving, then slowly backed away. It made a sound, not a roar, but a low chirping noise I'd never heard from a Cthar before. The other warriors immediately disengaged. They just left. No further violence. No retribution. They returned to their ship and departed the station within the hour. Flynn drained the last of their drink, paws shaking slightly. I've maintained life support systems on 17 different species habitats. I understand biochemistry and behavioral patterns, but I cannot explain what I saw that day. Zyler left Argos, 7 with more questions than answers. Flynn's testimony confirmed the basic event. The slap had indeed occurred, but provided no explanation for its effectiveness. By all logical analysis, Ctherix Prime should have torn Captain Rostova apart for such an affront. Instead, it had retreated, apparently cowed by an action that couldn't have caused it physical pain or harm. The Xantid's logical mind rebelled against the absence of mechanism. There had to be some explanation, some hidden technology, some secret biological factor, some misunderstood context that would make sense of the encounter. Zyler redirected their investigation toward understanding humans themselves. If the explanation wasn't in the event, perhaps it lay in the species that had precipitated it. On the Research Habitat Omniscience Actual, Zyler consulted with Dr. Kaelvax, a xenobiologist specializing in mammalian species. The Rigelian scientist's lab was filled with holographic displays of various species anatomies, with a particular focus on nervous system development. Humans. Dr. Kaelvax seemed delighted by the inquiry. Fascinating creatures, still woefully understudied. Most researchers find them too variable for good data sets, but that variability is precisely what makes them so interesting. I'm particularly interested in human confrontation behaviors, Zyler explained, especially any that might influence interspecies interactions. Dr. Kaelvax activated a holographic display showing the evolutionary history of humans. You have to understand their evolutionary context to make sense of their behaviors. Humans evolved on a predator-rich world as relatively weak omnivores. They weren't the strongest, fastest, or most well-armed species in their environment, yet they ultimately became the dominant life form. How? The hologram shifted to show early humans facing various Earth predators: large felines, canids, and massive bears. 2 key adaptations, Dr. Kaelvax continued. First, humans developed complex social structures and tool use, allowing them to compensate for individual weakness through collective action. But second, and perhaps more relevant to your inquiry, they developed sophisticated dominance and submission behaviors that originally evolved for intraspecies conflicts but were later applied to interspecies interactions. Dominance behaviors? Zyler asked. like physical combat. Sometimes, but often much more subtle. The hologram now showed humans interacting with domesticated earth animals, wolves that have been transformed into the creatures called dogs. Humans are one of the few known species to have extensively domesticated predators, Dr. Kaelvax explained. They developed an intuitive understanding of how to communicate dominance to other species through body language, eye contact, vocal tone, and yes, sometimes physical correction. A human training a dog might use a gentle physical touch, not to cause pain, but to establish hierarchy. Zyler's crystalline thought structures began to form new connections. Are you suggesting that Captain Rostova was domesticating Ctherix Prime? Dr. Kaelvax's mouth tentacles waved in amusement. Not exactly, though the comparison has merit. I'm suggesting that humans carry deep instinctual knowledge of how to interact with predator species. What you're describing sounds like what I might call an ancestral response, an instinctive behavior drawn from thousands of years of human evolution, triggered in a moment of extreme stress. The xenobiologist continued, growing more animated. Consider what we know about Cthar social structures. They're hierarchical pack hunters with complex dominance rituals. Their confrontations with each other often involve displays of aggression that rarely lead to actual combat. The subordinate typically recognizes the dominant individual and submits before violence becomes necessary. But Ctherix Prime was the dominant individual, Zyler objected. How could a human establish dominance over it? That's where it gets interesting, Dr. Kaelvax replied. In Cthar hierarchy, dominance isn't just about physical strength. It's about the projection of absolute certainty, the unwavering belief in one's own superior position. A Cthar that hesitates or shows fear, even momentarily, can lose status instantly. The hologram shifted to show comparative brain structures. There's some evidence that certain mammalian dominance behaviors can trigger responses across species barriers because they activate primitive brain structures. Captain Rostova's actions, direct eye contact, physical correction without hesitation, and absolute confidence in the face of a superior physical threat, might have activated ancient circuits in the Cthar brain, momentarily confusing its perception of the dominance hierarchy. The theory was compelling, but still incomplete. Zyler needed to speak with Rostova herself. Tracking down Captain Eva Rostova proved challenging. After the Argos 7 incident, she had been reassigned to a frontier outpost in a region frequently raided by various hostile species. Whether this was a promotion recognizing her unique abilities or an attempt to keep her away from galactic attention remained unclear. The journey to Outpost Terminus took Zyler through 3 disputed sectors and required navigating the bureaucracy of 4 different security checkpoints. By the time the Xantid's research vessel approached the outpost, a utilitarian structure embedded in a small moon orbiting a gas giant, they had developed a new appreciation for the challenges of frontier life. Zyler's request for an interview was initially denied, then denied again. On the 3rd attempt, Zyler received a terse message. Maintenance Bay 4. 2,200 hours. Come alone. Maintenance Bay 4 was dimly lit and cluttered with equipment in various states of repair. Zyler waited, sensory appendages alert for any movement. The human emerged from behind a stack of supply crates, her movements fluid and controlled. Captain Eva Rostova was not what Zyler had expected. Based on the growing legend, the Xantid had anticipated someone physically imposing, perhaps bristling with hidden weapons or exuding some mystical aura of authority. Instead, Rostova was of average human height and build, with short dark hair streaked with gray and features that showed signs of solar radiation exposure common to those who served on frontier outposts. The only remarkable thing about her was her eyes, sharp, observant, and utterly calm. "You're the journalist," she said. "Not a question. Historian and journalist," Zyler corrected. "I've been researching the Argos 7 incident." Rostova's expression didn't change. "There is no Argos 7 incident. The official record states there was a minor environmental system malfunction that has since been corrected." "I've spoken with a witness," Zyler said. "I know about the confrontation with Ctherix Prime. I know about the slap. A flicker of something, annoyance, resignation, crossed Rostova's face. She gestured toward a pair of storage containers. "Sit if you want. I have 20 minutes before I need to review perimeter security." As they sat, Zyler noted that Rostova positioned herself with her back to a wall and a clear view of the bay's entrance. The instinctive caution of someone who had survived multiple combat situations. "I'm not interested in sensationalism," Zyler began. "I'm trying to understand what actually happened. The mechanism behind it." "There is no mechanism," Rostova replied flatly. "No secret technology, no special training, no mystical human ability. I acted on instinct in a desperate situation, and it worked. That's all." "That can't be all," Zyler insisted. "Cthar don't retreat, especially not Ctherix Prime. Not from a physical gesture that couldn't have caused actual pain." Rostova was silent for a moment, studying the Xantid with that same calm, assessing gaze. Finally, she sighed. "It wasn't just the slap," she said. "That's what everyone focuses on because it's dramatic, visible. The reality was more complex." She leaned forward slightly. "I've been observing Ctherix Prime throughout the negotiations, watching its reactions, its body language. I noticed patterns, micro-expressions, if you can call them that, on a reptilian face. Moments of uncertainty masked by increased aggression." "You're saying Ctherix Prime was insecure?" Zyler's tone conveyed skepticism. "I'm saying it was overcompensating," Rostova corrected. "The Cthar had suffered several recent defeats. Nothing major, but enough to create whispers of weakness among their own kind. Ctherix Prime needed a victory to secure its position, and the negotiations were going poorly. Its rage, when the council representative mentioned weakness, wasn't just anger. It was fear that the accusation might be true." Rostova's explanation continued, revealing layers of observation and intuition that had informed her actions. She had noticed the other Cthar watching their leader with what she interpreted as evaluative attention. She had observed subtle changes in Ctherix Prime's posture when certain topics were discussed, and she had recognized the pattern of escalating aggression as a cover for underlying uncertainty, something she had seen in human interactions throughout her military career. "When it killed the security officers, I knew it was committed to violence," Rostova said. "But the way it approached us afterward, there was a theatrical quality to it. It was performing for its subordinates as much as threatening us. And that gave me an opening." "The slap," Zyler said. "The slap was physical, yes, but it was primarily psychological," Rostova explained. "Cthar society is built on absolute dominance hierarchies. They respect strength of will even more than strength of body. By meeting its gaze without fear and correcting its behavior as if it were subordinate to me, I created a moment of cognitive dissonance. I acted with such absolute certainty that I belonged at the top of the hierarchy that for a crucial moment, Ctherix Prime's brain couldn't process the contradiction between what it knew, that could physically destroy me, and what it was experiencing, my complete lack of submission behavior." "And that was enough?" Zyler asked, still struggling to accept the explanation. "That, combined with the audience of its subordinates and its own pre-existing insecurities about its position," Rostova nodded. "In that specific moment, with those specific factors, it created enough hesitation for the situation to defuse. If I tried the same thing a day earlier or later, or with a different Cthar, I'd likely be dead." Zyler absorbed this information, finding it simultaneously more logical and more complex than the rumors had suggested. "Have you attempted to replicate this approach?" A shadow passed over Rostova's face. "The council scientists tried. They called it the Rostova Protocol, a systematic attempt to identify the elements that made my intervention successful and apply them in controlled situations. It didn't go well." "Casualties?" Zyler asked. "Several," Rostova confirmed grimly. "The problem is that what happened on Argos 7 wasn't a technique that can be taught. It was a perfect storm of observation, instinct, timing, and luck. You can't systemize that." Before Zyler could ask another question, an alarm blared through the outpost. Rostova was on her feet instantly, all contemplative calm replaced by focused alertness. "Perimeter breach," she said, checking the communication device on her wrist. "Multiple hostiles. Stay here. Xyler, driven by journalistic instinct and genuine curiosity, did not stay there. Instead, they followed Rostova at a discreet distance as she rushed toward the outpost command center. The situation was chaotic but controlled. Display screens showed multiple breach points around the outpost perimeter, with hostile forces advancing from several directions. Xyler recognized the attackers from the distinctive silhouettes, remnants of the Kthar forces that had scattered after recent defeats, now operating as raiders rather than an organized military. Rostova stepped into the center of the command room, and the atmosphere shifted subtly. Personnel who had been tense and reactive became focused and deliberate. She issued orders with calm precision, her voice never rising but carrying absolute authority. Tactical teams to sectors 3, 5, and 8. Engineering, reroute power to the eastern shield grid. Medical, prepare for casualties but stay behind the secondary perimeter until called. As the defense unfolded, Xyler observed the human security team in action. They moved with coordinated precision, communicating with minimal verbal exchanges. A raised hand here, a nod there, shared glances that conveyed complex information. Under pressure, they displayed the adaptability for which humans were known, adjusting tactics as the situation evolved and improvising solutions to unexpected developments. At one point, a breach in the lower maintenance tunnels threatened to allow attackers behind the defensive line. Without hesitation, Rostova led a small team to confront the threat directly. Xyler, against all logical self-preservation instincts, followed at a safe distance. The confrontation in the dimly lit tunnel was brief but intense. 3 Kthar raiders, smaller than Ktharix Prime, but still formidable predators, advanced with weapons drawn. Rostova's team responded with coordinated defense, using the confined space to neutralize the Kthar's physical advantages. Xyler noticed that Rostova herself never displayed the dominance behavior she had described using on Argos 7. Instead, she fought with practical efficiency, her movements economical and precise. This was not the mystical human who had tamed an apex predator with a slap. This was a veteran soldier fighting to protect her outpost. The attack was repelled with minimal casualties among the outpost personnel. As the all-clear sounded, Xyler found themselves re-evaluating everything they had learned about humans in general and Rostova in particular. In the aftermath, Rostova found Xyler observing the medical team treating the wounded. "You were supposed to stay in the maintenance bay," she said, though there was no real reprimand in her tone. "I wanted to observe," Xyler replied simply. "To understand." "And do you?" "Understand." "I'm beginning to," Xyler said. There was no magical dominance technique on Argos 7, was there? No single factor that can explain what happened. "No," Rostova agreed. "Just as there's no single factor that explains how my species went from vulnerable primates to a spacefaring civilization in a cosmically brief time span. We're a collection of contradictions, physically weak but persistent, technologically inconsistent but innovative, individually fragile but collectively resilient." She gestured toward her team, now engaged in repair and recovery operations around the outpost. "What you saw today wasn't special. It's who we are at our best: adaptable, observant, working together, reading each other in our environment, responding to challenges with whatever tools we have available. Sometimes that's advanced technology. Sometimes it's a well-placed slap and a confident stare." In the days that followed, before departing Outpost Terminus, Xyler conducted additional interviews with Rostova and other human personnel. The picture that emerged was far more nuanced than the galactic rumors had suggested. The slap incident, as it had become known, was neither a demonstration of a secret human ability nor a random stroke of luck. It was the product of a species whose evolutionary history had equipped them with a unique set of instincts and observational skills, a species that had survived on a predator-filled world not by being the strongest, but by understanding strength and finding unexpected ways to navigate dangerous situations. As Xyler finalized their report during the journey back to Xanad space, they struggled with how to frame their findings. the sensationalist story of a human subduing the galaxy's most feared predator with a single slap would undoubtedly attract more readers. But the truth, complex, nuanced, and in many ways more impressive, deserved to be told. In the end, Xyler chose accuracy over sensation. Their published account, Predator and Prey, re-examining interspecies dominance behaviors in crisis situations, caused less initial excitement than the rumors had, but ultimately gained recognition as the definitive analysis of the event. The article concluded with an observation that would be quoted in xenobiology textbooks for generations. The true strength of humanity lies not in any single capability or characteristic, but in their unique combination of contradictory traits: physical vulnerability paired with psychological resilience, logical analysis alongside intuitive leaps, individual weakness offset by collective adaptability, and perhaps most significantly, an evolutionary history that has embedded within them a deep, instinctual understanding of predator psychology. In Captain Rostova's momentary dominance over Ctherix Prime, we glimpse not a magical ability, but the complex legacy of a species that evolved alongside predators, learned to domesticate them, and ultimately transcended the predator-prey relationship entirely. The slap that echoed across the galaxy was merely the visible manifestation of a far more profound evolutionary dialogue, one that humans carry within them wherever they go among the stars. For Xyler, the investigation had transformed from an exercise in debunking an absurd rumor into a profound lesson about the limitations of purely logical analysis when confronting the complexities of interspecies psychology. The Xanad historian had arrived seeking a mechanism and departed with a new appreciation for the intangible, the intuitive, and the deeply contextual nature of intelligent life's interactions. And somewhere on a frontier outpost, Captain Eva Rostova continued her duties, unconcerned with her minor legendary status, focused instead on the practical challenges of surviving on the edge of explored space. One day, one crisis, and occasionally, one perfectly timed slap at a time.